Good evening, happy Halloween, happy Spooktober. We're going to get into another scary story around the fire. Tonight's story is about Chucky, the haunted doll. This story is not about the weird Chucky in the movies, the far-fetched, strange-looking doll. No, this is about the real Chucky doll. The real-life Chucky, whose real name was Robert, stands 40 inches tall. It is rumored that the doll was gifted to Robert Eugene Otto by his family's maid. It is said that the maid practiced black magic and voodoo, and she put a curse on the doll before giving it to the boy because she was unhappy with how the families treated her. But the truth is that Gene's grandparents gave him the doll in 1906 after a trip to Germany. Gene was immediately drawn to his new companion and named him Robert after himself. The doll is a one-of-a-kind, purchased from a shop window full of clowns and jesters. The sailor suit that Robert wears once belonged to Gene himself. Robert Eugene Otto was born on October 24, 1900, to Thomas Osgood Otto and Minnie Elizabeth Watkins Otto. He had 3 older siblings. When Gene was 10 years old, he woke up in the middle of the night to see Robert sitting at the edge of his bed, staring at him. His mother was then awakened by Gene's startled screams and sounds of furniture being moved. When she got to his room, she found a terrified Gene hiding under the covers, with his toys mutilated and furniture strewn all over the room. He claimed that Robert did it. Gene continued to blame anything bad that happened on Robert, including when his parents found dismembered and mutilated toys all over the house. One of the theories about why Robert is so haunted is that Gene's identity is too mixed up in the doll. Gene poured his personality into the doll, making him more and more realistic. An aunt who lived with the Ottos was worried about all of the chaos Robert the doll was causing. She suggested to Gene's parents that they remove the doll from Gene's room and put it in storage. The Ottos did this, locking Robert in a box and placing him up in the attic. The next night, the aunt was found dead in her bed. She was an older woman, and it said that she had died of a stroke. Still, the Ottos were superstitious about her death and opted to bring Robert out of storage and back into Gene's room before he could do any more harm. Gene also liked to spend time having conversations with the doll while playing. His parents claimed that while this was going on, they'd hear 2 voices coming from the room, as if the doll was talking back. Strange stories about Gene and his doll followed him into adulthood. As the child maintained a relationship with it long after most kids would have long forgotten about a doll, Gene kept Robert with him his entire life. He married Annette Parker on May 3, 1930. After his parents' death, Gene and Annette moved back into the house. Annette told him to put the doll away because it freaked her out. Gene did, by making Robert his very own room in the attic. Robert was said to be heard giggling and running around in his new bedroom. Other people claimed that Robert often had little beaded figures in his lap, which he would throw across the room when he was in a temper. Passers-by also claimed that they saw Robert staring out of a window from an upstairs bedroom. This is easily one of the most alarming parts of the story because Gene claimed that not only to have put Robert in the attic, but he says he locked it up as well. It would have been impossible for Robert to be out of the attic. Prior to Gene's death, he began spending more and more time with Robert. He was said to be up there in the attic talking to the doll as his health declined, spending his final months with a familiar figure from his childhood. Gene died on June 24, 1974, at the age of 73. When reporter Malcolm Ross came to visit the house, he claimed that the doll's presence made him uncomfortable because his face seemed to change depending on the tone of the conversation in the room. Some believed that Gene imparted as much of his spirit as he could into the doll before his death, and it is him who's causing such uneasiness to those who encounter the doll. Gene's wife, Anna, died a few years after Gene did. Before she died, she made a curious request. Because she had never liked the doll, she asked that it be locked in a cedar chest and left up in its attic bedroom. Even after she sold the house, this request was supposed to stay in effect, almost as if she knew the doll was trouble. While her request was honored, Robert didn't stay in the attic forever. Once the auto home was sold, there was nobody to ensure that Robert stayed in the attic. While stories differ as to who owned the house after the autos, each one is uniquely horrifying. One story claims that a family bought the house, and a little girl found the doll in the attic, but was unwilling to play with him, claiming that he was alive and wanted to hurt her. She would wake up in the middle of the night with Robert sitting on her face, something that paranormal experts believed was a murder attempt. Another claims that a man who bought the house and found the doll died from carbon monoxide poisoning, and that the doll went missing. The most easily proven story, though, is that a woman who bought the house kept the doll with her as she moved, and eventually turned him over to the Fort East Martello Museum. She said the doll was haunted and moved around her house on its own. These days, you can visit Robert at the East Martello Museum, formerly known as the Key West Museum, where he's on display behind a layer of safety glass. But don't take his picture without asking. He seems to be camera shy and lashes out at any of those who have not asked his permission first. There are many apology letters to Robert from those who didn't ask first, hanging on the walls of his new home. Guests also sometimes leave offerings for the doll, including candy and marijuana. The auto house, where Gene and Robert once lived, is now a historic Key West guest house, known as the Artist House, and features haunted tours. Thank you so much for watching tonight's horror story all the way to the end. Happy Halloween. We'll see you in the next one. Bye. Love you.